John Miller is the New York City Police Department's Deputy Commissioner of Intelligence and Counterterrorism. He's also our former senior correspondent. Welcome back to Studio 57.
Good to be here, Charlie.
Tell me whether an attack like this, in your judgment, is inevitable in the United States or in New York City? And are we prepared, and how do you prepare against it?
I think in many ways it is inevitable. I think it's less a question of if, more a question of when. And I say that in a context, which is, you don't have to go back to ancient history or trace the lines from 9/11. You have to go back to September, when ISIS put out the call through its official spokesman for people to attack in their own countries with what they have at hand. And then you have to go back to October, where on, I think, the 20th, you see Martin Rouleau run over soldiers in Canada with his truck. The next day, you see Mr. Bibeau attack Parliament with a rifle. 2 days later in New York, you see a man with a hatchet who had 270 internet visits to ISIS or Al-Qaeda websites in the 20 days preceding attacked New York City police officers. You see the action in Australia. You see the threat level go up in Britain and in Sydney because of ISIS calls directly to people there. So this is a part of the culture of the marketing of violence by terrorist groups.
So how do you prepare for it?
Well, in New York City, the preparations have been going on for 13 years. We have a distinct advantage in that there are 1,000 people in the NYPD who work counterterrorism matters on a daily basis, hundreds more in the FBI who are dedicated to that, not in a part-time way, but in a constant way. And there's a very strong partnership. There's 400 people in the emergency service unit, which would be the equivalent of our SWAT team. So if you take a small scenario at one location, as we saw in Sydney, or a wider cast like the Mumbai attacks, we're one of the few cities that is scaled to meet that.
You know, the interesting thing about what happened in Sydney is that the person responsible for this had a long history of run-ins with the cops. I mean, he was a bad guy. But as a counterterrorism analyst pointed out in the papers, you can't keep 24-hour surveillance on these types of people. How many of these type of people are in New York that you keep constant surveillance on? How do you keep track of them?
Well, we have a daily meeting where we kind of go over who's on the radar, why are on the radar, how do they get on the radar? Do we know enough about them to figure out is there legal action that can be taken? Are they arrestable? Is this an investigation? What tools will that require? And that's a bit of a mill, but you're correct. It's something we talk about every day.
Yeah. Were there any lessons learned, do you think, from U.S. officials, by U.S. officials, from how it was handled yesterday in Australia?
I spoke to Andrew Scipione, the police commissioner in Sydney today, the commissioner of the New South Wales Police, and I asked him just that, which is what can we take from this? And he went over for me a lot of the tactical considerations and what happened. And I think from each one of these, we can learn a lesson. And we'll learn a couple out of this. And we'll talk about it more.
Which are?
Yeah, I was going to say, can you share the lesson you learned? Yeah.
So I think there's a good reason not to share the tactical lessons, because if we share them with you, which is a good thing, we're also sharing them with people who may be out there thinking of something like this. But the important part is that we talk about each one of these after, and that the global community in the counterterrorism world, Andrew Scipione used to be the head of counterterrorism before he was the commissioner, the head of counterterrorism now, Nikki Caldas. We worked together when I was in the Los Angeles police with Commissioner Scipione, with Nick when I was in the FBI. So this is how we compare notes. It's a small town.
Well, we want to continue the conversation at 8. Can you stay? I like it when you're in the studio, John Miller. Nice to have you back.
I'll be here.
We'll see you in an hour.